name is Sam Baltrusis. I'm the author of Ghosts of Boston Haunts of the Hub and Ghosts of Salem Haunts of the Witch City. During the day, I'm a newspaper editor and journalist. At night, I moonlight as a paranormal researcher and write about the state's haunted happenings. I dig deep for the skeletal secrets buried beneath the Bay State's blood-stained soil. Massachusetts has its secrets. Dark secrets. Tales of murder, mayhem, and madness that happened over a 300-year period. For the next half hour, we'll take a haunted train ride across the Commonwealth, from the oldest continuously operated hotel, the Omni Parker House, to the beautiful but extremely active haunted Victorian and Gardner. This is the 13 most haunted in Massachusetts. Welcome to my nightmare.
My name is Sam Baltrusis. I am the author of Ghosts of Boston Haunts of the Hub and Ghosts of Salem Haunts of the Witch City. Joining tonight is my ghost host, the Lady in Black. Hello, Lady in Black. So we had a little talk earlier. Apparently the Lady in Black is not very happy because her haunt, George's Island, is not on my most haunted list. George's Island is number one. Sorry, Lady in Black. I actually did an investigation on George's Island. We picked up an electronic voice phenomenon on the island. And you know what? The voice sounded like a man.
The 13th most haunted spot in Massachusetts. We start where it all began for me. The Boston Common and the Omni Parker House located in downtown Boston. There's an inexplicable supernatural energy that emanates from the oldest continuously run hotel in the country, the Omni Parker House. Besides being one of the more breathtakingly ornate structures in Boston, it's also allegedly one of its most haunted. Originally built in October 1855, the Parker House boasts a slew of ghostly reports, ranging from Harvey Parker himself, who passed away on May 31st, 1884, to mysterious orbs floating down the 10th floor corridor, and a malevolent male spirit with a disturbing laugh who reportedly lingers in the now off-limits room of 303. On the mezzanine level, there is what is known as the Charles Dickens mirror. Now it is said if you say Charles Dickens 3 times, something weird will happen. I dare you to say it. Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens.
Charles Dickens mirror was the mirror that Charles Dickens used to practice in front of in 1867 and 1868 when he came to Boston to recite the Christmas Carol. Everyone knows that Charles Dickens wrote the Christmas Carol, but not a lot of people know that he was also a very, very gifted orator. He would do a whole one-person show, and he would practice his soliloquy right in front of that mirror. Legend has it that when you go to that mirror and if you say the words Charles Dickens, Charles Dickens, Charles Dickens, either the elevator will come up or something odd will happen. Too many to go, but the weirdest one I ever had was one time I just was going to the little boys' room up on the 2nd floor, and all of a sudden it just got really dark, really cold. The lights started to flicker. Dr. Matthew Rugger was the guy who decided to go in the Boston Common burial ground, do some grave rubbings, and learn the hard way that you're not supposed to do it. He woke into some spirits that were in there, who I believe are the Deer Island children, who decided to tap him on his shoulder and appear to him back in 1979.
Welcome back to 13 Most Haunted in Massachusetts. Again, my name is Sam Baltrusis. I'm the author of 13 Most Haunted in Massachusetts. Joining me now is veteran tour guide Jeffrey Doucette.
Good evening. How are you doing, Sam?
Doing great, Jeff. So Jeff and I actually have a history together. We've worked on Haunted Provincetown, or Haunted P-Town, also Haunted Boston. So we've done tours together. We also did a gig on Saturday with the radio people. That was kind of a nightmare.
Yes, it was. It was actually should be number 14 on 13 Most Haunted or 14 Most Haunted.
Yeah, exactly.
The drunk radio hosts.
Yeah, it was very, very traumatic. So Boston Common. So what number 13 on the list? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of the other places I've been to or heard from are, much more haunted, but there's been a lot of weird things that have happened to me in Boston Common. I'm a person that was a skeptic at first, but throughout the years, very odd things have happened when I've been giving tours of Boston Common. A lot of people would be I always encourage people, they say, can you take some photographs? And almost, 3 or 4 times a week, people are showing me orbs or just weird things that are just cannot be explained through, that's just something that's a glare from another camera or a headlight. Very, very odd, very, very weird. And these are people who are friends or people who aren't really full-blown ghost hunters. They're just messing around with the camera, and then all of a sudden they're like, what is that?
Well, I actually had an experience, Central Burying Ground, which we kind of touched on in the clip before. The girl
Right.
that shows up. My first encounter in the Boston Common was that girl. And it looked like fog. My assistant was like, Sam, that's fog. And I jumped over the fence, which I would not recommend doing, to get closer, and she disappeared. There was a story, Dr. Matthew Rucker, dates back to the 1970s.
Correct. Dr. Matthew Rucker was he was a dentist in 1979, and the reason why I really believe this story is he says he was a scientist, and he goes, I have no logical explanation to give as to why he saw this young girl. He was coming home, he was leaving a very, very boring lecture, according to Matthew. As he's walking through, he's like me, he's a historian. I'm more of a historian than I'm a ghost hunter. And he let himself into the burial ground, and he was going to do some grave rubbings. Then all of a sudden, as he's putting his hand against one of the headstones, all of a sudden he feels a tug on the collar. He looks around, and all of a sudden he sees this young girl. She's kind of like pointing and laughing at him. He didn't think it was an Emerson student doing some interpretive dance there. He decided that it was time to perhaps leave the burial ground. As he takes a few steps away from the headstone, all of a sudden the young girl vanishes, but then begins to rematerialize all throughout the headstone, throughout the burial ground. He runs out of the burial ground, but before he can get out of there, all of a sudden he gets to his car. He feels something reach into his pants pocket, brings out his car keys, dangles it in front of him, and drops it right in front of his feet. He goes to the police, literally in the middle of the night, and this is during the Central Burial Ground. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's right near the Old Lowe's Theater, which back when I was growing up, when Sam and I was the combat zone. So
not a good place. That was a nightmare.
Yeah, a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll going on there. So Matthew goes to the police, tells the police what's occurred, and the police think he's probably been doing some drugs. And but listening to this whole story was a Boston Globe reporter, and this is how we get the story today. So that's, if someone's going to the police in the middle of the night to say that all this weird stuff happens, I'm going to probably err on the side that this guy is not making this stuff up.
And to be able to reaffirm it, I did, I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I had the experience with the girl, but we have multiple photos of this girl. According to accounts, she was wearing a hospital gown, and according to Dr. Matthew Rucker, had the saddest eyes he's ever seen. Sort of like a soiled hospital gown. So Provincetown, we both worked in Provincetown. I did my upcoming book after 13 Most Haunted in Massachusetts is Haunted Provincetown.
Right.
Tony Chop Chop.
Tony Chop Chop. Yep, there was Tony Chop Chop. He lived at in the Victoria House during the early 1970s, 1970.
Right.
And he was a really, really good-looking guy.
Really?
And yes, according to from what I've read, in the book In His Garden, which is a phenomenal book which I read, and back in 1970, he was just living down in Provincetown. If you go down to Provincetown in the off season, it's pretty much just filled with snowbanks and alcoholics. And in 1970, two young girls from Providence College, Provincetown, Providence, Rhode Island, go for a little weekend jaunt, and they're never heard from again. And apparently, after the car is found abandoned in Truro, they question Tony, and they find that in the Victoria House, this guest house, which is right off, right in the center of town, they found one of the either a locket or a ankle bracelet that belonged to the young girl. And lo and behold, they go to this area where the car was abandoned, and Tony was the caretaker, and he'd apparently chopped them, had killed them, sexually assaulted them, took the bodies to this marijuana field and chopped their bodies up and took out their heart. And supposedly at the Victoria House, people who stay there will say that they hear cries and screams and stuff like that from that room.
I actually, I was one of my first places staying in Provincetown in 2007 was at the Victoria House, and I was in room number 4, which is where he stayed. I have this, I don't know what it is, but I somehow go to the places that are the most haunted in the city without even knowing it. And then I was creeped out. I heard a moan or a cry coming from the closet, and that's where they found some evidence.
Bodies, yep.
So it's potentially he actually kept the bodies at the Victoria House.
Yep, they always call him Provincetown's very own Buffalo Bill. And stuff.
So moving on the list, so Salem, with the Witch House, the Jonathan Corwin House. My last book, Ghosts of Salem, Haunts of the Witch City, definitely haunted. Voices, it was on Ghost Adventures, definitely historic and haunted. So I probably would move it higher on the list, but it's one of those things that are kind of overdone, but if you want to visit Salem, definitely go to the Witch House. So number 10 is Boston Light, which is our lighthouse. It's coming up on its 300-year anniversary.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And Boston Harbor is another book that I'm also working on, coming up 2016. Any thoughts on Boston Harbor? A lot of people that were undesirables were kept in the Boston Harbor.
Right, exactly. And also not too far away from there was actual Castle Island and stuff like that. So there was a lot of, the Castle Island held prisoners, British prisoners during War of 1812, Confederate prisoners during the Civil War, and also there was a lot of shipwrecks around Boston Harbor.
So we're going to roll to our next clip, which is Spider Gates Cemetery in Leicester, Mass., not Leicester, as I say in my clip. Jeff, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Roll
Happy
clip.
Halloween.
Coming in at number 9 from our 13 most haunted in Massachusetts countdown is the Spider Gate Cemetery in Leicester. There are so many over-the-top myths surrounding the Friends Cemetery. The Quaker burial ground earned its spooky nickname because of the mysterious cobweb-style gates welcoming visitors to this haunted hotspot. But that's just the beginning. Some of the urban legends we've heard? Spider Gate Cemetery has an altar in the center used by Satanists. A young boy hanged himself in the cemetery in the 1980s. There's a second cemetery nearby that can only be found once. There's an area in the cemetery where no grass will grow. A mysterious entity roars in the woods. If you walk around Marmaduke Earl's gravestone 10 times at midnight and say, "Marmaduke, Marmaduke, speak to me," he will. And that's just a few of the legends surrounding this creepy old cemetery in the woods of Leicester.
So we're back, the 13 most haunted in Massachusetts. Joining me now is my really good friend, Rachel Hoffman.
Hi.
Welcome to the show, Rachel. So Rachel has investigated a lot of the top haunts on our list. So Spider Gate Cemetery, what are your thoughts on Spider Gates?
Spider Gates I didn't make it into all the way. It was that winter fiasco, and we got trapped in the snow. So we didn't go all the way out there, but that was one of the ones I longed to go to. So I'm jealous of you there.
Yeah, to shoot that segment and to do research for the book, we went out there, and our segment producer, Liz Tagle, turned ghostly white after having an encounter with what we think is a man, but we're not sure. They say it's the 8th gate up to hell, and there's all these horrible stories associated with that cemetery. So definitely check it out, or don't check it out if you're chicken. Don't go at night. It's supposedly evil. So our next haunt is the USS Salem in Quincy, which is one of your first haunts.
Yeah, actually, USS Salem is my home haunt, and we spent years there. It wasn't just a day or a night, it was years. And so we have so many experiences there. Actually, my sister's a skeptic, and this is where her skepticism kind of took a back seat. Some of the equipment in the medical room starts to come alive.
Wow.
And the machines that would snap people back to life, all of a sudden the sound would be like a disembodied voice that would be snapping in the air. You could hear it.
Wow.
And she was checking out the materials beforehand, and during the investigation, the snapping noise occurred, and literally she had to leave the ship.
USS Salem, for me, there's been tons of reports there. There's also, they're talking about moving it from Quincy to East Boston, but there's the latest news that possibly it's going to Fall River. Did you hear the latest on that, or?
I haven't heard any late news, but I was on a few weeks ago, and it definitely needs to get docked somewhere so they can start working on it.
She's in bad condition.
Yes.
Okay, so our next haunt is Longfellow's Wayside Inn in Sudbury, Mass. Ghost Adventures did an investigation there. It's kind of their Valentine's Day investigation. There's an alleged ghost there. Her name is Jerusha Howe, and she was one of the daughters of one of the former owners. And Ghost Adventures, Rachel is part of Paranormal Expeditions and was on a show with Zach. What was it, Paranormal Challenge it was called?
Yes, Paranormal Challenge. I was in the Rolling Hills Asylum in East Bethany, New York. Also a great haunt.
And I'll tell you, the EVP, the electronic voice phenomena that Rachel and Paranormal Expeditions picked up was absolutely incredible. It was a Class A EVP, and the voice said,
"Don't touch me again."
"Don't touch me again." And it was a blood-curdling scream, kind of like this. And I still, when I hear the EVP, it still gives me chills.
Yeah.
So getting back to Ghost Adventures, they investigated this house, kind of, I think, disrespectful to the ghosts. So a lot of the haunts have been investigated by ghost hunters and Ghost Adventures. From the local haunts, them going in, like what experiences with that, with going in after they did an investigation?
Generally, actually, one of the ones on our list that will make it to the Lizzie Borden house number 4 is I followed them after they go through these investigations, sometimes just by chance, just because we're here on the East Coast and we happen to do some of these locations that are close to, our hearts here. And I've found just different levels of things left behind, negative energies, a lot of things like that. And it comes into play a lot of the time that they don't close out after the investigation or pray or do a lot of those things. So I feel like sometimes they take hitchhikers with them.
Yeah. And they go to other locations.
And then they drop them off.
They drop them off, exactly. And that does happen, by the way. So next was the Joshua Ward House in Salem. They're turning the Joshua Ward House into a hotel. I actually had an experience. I gave tours in Salem, and I had what was a mark of untrinity on my chest, which was a scratch mark, which is kind of common. I don't know what to think about that. It was pretty. You've heard of that before.
Yeah, definitely.
Scratch marks. We'll talk about later the number 1 haunt. I had something similar happen to me there, but Joshua Ward House, kind of curious what's going to happen when it's turned into a boutique hotel. Boutique, boo. So our next haunt on the list is the Houghton Mansion. That is number 5. So that was your first haunt.
That was actually my first, and I went there all by myself before I formed my all-girl crew, Paranormal Expeditions. I went there by myself as a single investigator, and it was amazing to kind of unleash some of the stuff going on there. The family members are very much still celebrating the festivities, the holidays, and my first EVP was I asked Mr. Houghton what his favorite holiday was, and he clearly said Christmas.
The 5th most haunted location in Massachusetts, it's Houghton Mansion in North Adams. Sensitives claim to have an inexplicable feeling of sadness when they enter the Houghton Mansion. Based on my brief but memorable visit to the haunted location, it's a bit overwhelming walking into the majestic old house built by Albert C. Houghton, a millionaire and North Adams' first mayor. It's almost as if the guilt associated with a tragedy in 1914 has psychically imprinted itself onto the walls of the historic Masonic temple located at 172 Church Street. So what happened more than a century ago to the Houghton family? While they were en route to Bennington, Vermont, driver John Witters hit a soft shoulder on the road after swerving around a team of horses. The car then tumbled down an embankment and flipped 3 times. The men, including Houghton and Witters, escaped with minor injuries. The women, including Houghton's daughter Mary, died instantly. Joining me now is Joni Mahan. She's the author of Bones in the Basement. She's also author of several books that I really enjoy reading. Welcome.
Thank you.
She's actually doing an event here tonight at one of our most haunted locations. Your experience of what happens at this location?
Oh, it's very active. The last time I was here, I actually saw an apparition in the basement. Saw the bottom of a little girl's dress as she moved through the room. So we've caught lots of EVPs here. I have a picture that I can show you later where something materialized beside me in a picture. So it's very active. A lot of things will happen tonight.
Now, based on your experience with the paranormal, do they come to you specifically?
A lot of times they are drawn to sensitives and psychic mediums, and I'm a sensitive, so I will get some activity, I'm sure. But a lot of times they also follow the strongest psychic, which I'm not. So, but I plan to be near those people, so I want to get the most activity possible.
13 most haunted in Massachusetts. Again, we're with Rachel Hoffman from Paranormal Expeditions. So next on our list, number 4 is the Lizzie Borden's house bed and breakfast in Fall River. So you know that very well.
Very, very well.
My theory is that perhaps Ghost Adventures may have brought a negative entity there.
That was one of my personal experiences where I think they had also. I came in the building about 12 hours after they left, and my crew was one of the first people going into the building, and we opened up a double door that they had the only exit to go out. And when we opened it, there was full-grown, mature black flies that flew. I mean, there was 100 of them. The homeowner actually came out and took pictures and was like, oh, we were capitalizing on the fact that they had to grow this size basically overnight.
Wow. Just so, if you've seen Amityville Horror or the demonic infestation, that's an indication. Also nausea, which I have, like Ghost Adventures, they reported nausea. So there's a lot of potential ideas or reasons why we think that perhaps that there's a demonic infestation there.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had my own experiences in the basement. I went down there initially with a large crew of people, but since then I've been there with just Tina and I, my other crew member, and we've spent several nights there. And every single time we're there, we have some kind of interaction in the basement, and it seems that's where the dark entity is. Whether or not there was someone or an untold story there that we're unaware of, or some kind of torment is going on down in the basement.
It's weird. A lot of it. First of all, this book that I wrote is probably the scariest book that I've written. And a lot of, I mean, I don't know if it's common that a lot of these haunts, the dark entities hide in the cellar.
Yeah.
They're cellar dwellers. Is there a reason why they hide in the basement?
I think that's where a lot of secrets hide. A lot of times we find broken toys or items that would indicate that someone was actually living down there. So whether or not somebody was held down there against their will, that's what I find a lot also with another place, the Victorian Mansion, that I find that there's these closed-in little spots that could potentially have housed a victim.
Wow. All right, so number 3 on our list is Hammond Castle. Hammond Castle was featured on Ghost Hunters, and what's weird about that, I actually went, because you were talking how you're kind of intuitively led to a haunt.
Yeah.
I was intuitively led to Hammond Castle in Gloucester right before Ghost Hunters went there to investigate. Josh Gates was on the investigation. I talked to Adam Berry a couple days after, and I'm like, are you going to Gloucester to Hammond Castle? And he's like, how did you know that? Because I just knew. I just kind of intuitively knew. And then, it's definitely haunted. It's one of those. The first thing everyone asked me, is Salem on your list? And the second thing they asked me is Hammond Castle on the list. So it's one of those things. It looks haunted. It is haunted. So number 2 on our list, really thought hard about what ranking I put, and of course I'm going to get a lot of letters and emails. They think their haunt is number 1, like the Lady in Black thinks that her haunt, George's Island, should be on the list. However, it didn't make it, sorry. Number 2 is Freetown. State Forest, it's in the southern Massachusetts, Bridgewater Triangle. You did a documentary that's amazing. Tell me about Freetown.
Freetown, we chose to go out there because so much of the murder and mayhem going on out there was amongst girls that were our age. And we felt as though we could kind of go out there and talk to these ghosts and maybe come up with some kind of, answers. And some of the bodies weren't found and some of these stories were unsolved. And so we went out there to try to see if we could kind of patch some things together. There were satanic rituals out there. There was so many things that we ran into that we really felt as though we made a connection. It's one of the strongest haunts in my book, and also being part of the Bridgewater Triangle also added to the eerie fact that it was the dumping grounds for all these bodies. I mean, it wasn't just the satanic rituals and the murders, it was also babies in dumpsters, and so it was just a burial ground for all these innocent victims.
The Aruda murder, the cheerleader that was tied to a tree, is one of those stories that haunts. It's such a haunting story.
Yes.
Anything that you wanted to say?
Turn?
Round.
Turn round north. They just told us where to go.
With this negative energy this place is so well known for, you are just susceptible to anything just sucking the life out of you.
We got it. Oh my god. And it drove a line that doesn't f***ing exist. What's that thing?
There is no intersection, no possibility that a car could have driven through this one single road.
You're all alone out there.
There's hands coming up all over the place, all the way across, like someone grabbed onto the car and didn't want to let the car go.
Ike, Young, and Sandra.
Mary Lou and Sandra.
So we're back. 13 Most Haunted in Massachusetts again is Rachel Hoffman, the amazing Rachel Hoffman. She is all over my book, 13 Most Haunted in Massachusetts. She has a lot of experience in, especially the top 5, and all the way to the USS Salem. So number 1 on our list, hands down, the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion in Gardner, Mass.
Yes.
Terrifying place. Tell me about your experience there.
My experience there, I've been there a few times actually. I did some charity events there to take care of their roof and stuff. And then I was invited back actually with Joni Mayhen to do an investigation. I immediately was drawn to the basement, and I went into the room where it was found that the pelvic bone was found in that room, as according to the police and everything. The police actually confiscated this human remains, and they never gave it back to the mansion. And so I'm drawn down there, especially to that room going towards the back of the basement where it's almost like a closet. Yeah. And I do feel as though there's an energy in there that tells me something was in there for a while. And I would guarantee it's the little girl that they found in the basement.
I've had recurring dreams of that house, and when you guys were doing the investigation, there was this feeling that they're going to take the breath out of Tina, or something was going to happen to Tina. And I actually had a psychic come up to me and say, "Don't go to that house. She will take the breath out of you." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And so, what happened to Tina?
Tina is a sensitive, and she kind of tries to tap into her psychic abilities here and there. But we were actually filming a pilot, and we were taking a break. And during the break, when everybody was supposed to be going to get warmed up, Tina kind of went into this zone, and they threw the cameras back up immediately to catch whatever was going on. And she had to be removed from the house entirely to regain almost control of her body.
So whatever was there took the breath out of Tina.
The most haunted location in Massachusetts? At number 1 is the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion in Gardner, Mass. Yes, welcome to my nightmare. Recently purchased by Rob Conti, the New Jersey-based owner of Dark Carnival, this historic structure was built in 1875 by Sylvester Knowlton Pierce, the founder of the S.K. Pierce & Son Chair Company. The home has had several famous guests such as P.T. Barnum, Norman Rockwell, Betty Davis, and President Calvin Coolidge. Several ghosts are said to haunt this mansion, including S.K. Pierce's first wife, Susan, who passed away of a mysterious illness only 3 weeks after moving in. And then there's Nanny Mattie Cornwell. She loved the mansion so much, in fact, she continued to reside here in the afterlife. S.K. Pierce himself is also said to haunt the mansion with other ghostly members of the Pierce family. Rob Conti plans to turn this into a haunted attraction next October and is looking to book this extremely haunted home for overnight guests. A house where guests check in but never check out. They're dying to have you stay.
What would you say is the most haunted location in Massachusetts?
The haunted Victorian mansion.
We just came back.
We just came back from the haunted Victorian. So tell me, Joni is the expert on the Victorian mansion, and there's just an energy that emanates from that place. Tell me about the latest with the Victorian mansion.
Well, it's been sold, which I'm actually pretty excited about. I interviewed the two owners, or one of the owners earlier, and he's a nice guy. They're going to turn it into not a bed and breakfast, but they're going to turn it into a rental. So they're going to do all the renovations, which is really nice. They're working on the eaves soon and going to repaint it and do everything that needs to be done. And then they're going to open it up in a year for overnight rentals. And then in October, it's going to be like a haunted house event, which will be fun.
Welcome back. That was the 13 Most Haunted in Massachusetts. I want to thank all of my guests, including the lady in black who choked me. Also, Jeffrey Doucette, veteran tour guide, and the lovely Rachel Hoffman.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to air this multiple public access stations throughout the state of Massachusetts. So thank you so much, Rachel, for your time.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Woo!